Hello, Neil. Can you hear us?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
It works.
It does. Fantastic. Well, nice to meet you, Neil.
You guys.
And thank you for coming in. I traded some messages with Paul earlier on, and he said that he'd mentioned it to you. So
Yeah.
I'm sort of delighted that you're here, and delighted that that you're willing to sort of give it a shot on the fly, which is quite a brave move, to be fair. So thank you very much.
That's okay, no problem.
So what we've done so far is we've given a basic introduction about some facts and figures, really, that are a little bit dull with regard to drink drive and the history of it. And where I was going to move on to when it became to the point of introducing Hannah to the Blab was just to say that there's an awful lot of drivers who think that this won't happen to me. These are the sort of things that happen to somebody else. And invariably, there's an awful lot of motorists who take risks without thinking about the consequences. With drivers speed, drivers use their mobile phones, drivers run around the corner without their seatbelt. The fatal four that come into play that are mentioned a lot through policing circles and online on social media. And this, I'm only having one, so I'll be fine. And I'm not going far. And yet there are countless families, obviously, Neil, that you will know only far too well, that have been devastated by the consequences of that mix of alcohol. Absolutely. And then getting behind the wheel of a car. Yeah. And what I was going to say, and I'm sure it's exactly the same for you, Neil, is that what I was going to say is that I am in no way in any position to sort of start telling Hannah's story. It's her story, and I wanted her to just sort of feel comfortable and tell us her experience. And so if you're comfortable and okay with that, well, then there's 27 people in the room. There's some cops, there's some non-cops, and you know, we want to try and expand and push this message out about the consequences of drink drive and what your story is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, our incident happened 3 years ago, August. So it was August 2012. We were pulling out of our driveway on the Isle of Wight, and just up the road from me, there's a little bit of a kind of kink in the road, really, which is where the investigating officers seemed to think this chap was when I pulled out my drive. We basically got T-boned by a drunk driver who was doing allegedly upwards of 70 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour limit. He was more than 2 times over the limit, and he'd been smoking cannabis during the day as well. The impact is just an almighty impact. It was a surreal moment for me, definitely, because the instant that it happened, I thought, you know, it just races, your mind races, and you think, oh, you know, this isn't right. I'm going to wake up in a minute. You know, it just felt like a dream, really, to me. And obviously, then the realization hits you that, you know, you've been hit hard. It was myself, my wife in the front passenger seat, and my daughter Evey, who was sat in the seat behind me. Because he T-boned us on the driver's side, Evey and myself got pretty much lots of the impact. And Evey pretty much, we feel that Evey died straight away. She had a brainstem injury. Although she went to Southampton Hospital from here, there was nothing they could do to save her. So we had to make the decision to the next day turn off her life support, and we donated her organs, which gives us a bit of comfort from obviously losing her. I had a pelvis fractured in 4 places, fractured vertebrae, broken ribs. Whole of my body was pretty much black and blue with cuts and various other things. And my wife suffered a head injury, which turned out to be a brain injury, and she ended up 4 days in a coma, and didn't know anything about Evie's death until she was woken up, you know, nearly a week later. So that's the kind of initial the outcome of what happened to us. My wife was out of hospital with kind of a week or so later. I was in for a month, in a wheelchair after that for a few months, and then obviously onto crutches and various physiotherapy and all the other good stuff that they do with you. So that's that. During this time, my other daughter Eleanor was upstairs watching out of her bedroom window as we pulled out the drive. So she was 14 at the time. Sorry, Evey was 10 when she died. Eleanor was upstairs and saw the whole thing out the bedroom window, and obviously came down to the road and saw the carnage that was there there in front of her. Luckily, neighbours dragged her away and took her into her house, and various other neighbours came out obviously to assist us. We were fairly fortunate that the hospital is less than a mile down the road from us, so we were, Penny and I were obviously in better shape than Evey in that respect, I suppose, to be given that kind of treatment from the hospital initially. But luckily, there was a nurse that lives just up the road who gave Penny oxygen at the time as well, which we feel has probably saved her life. Now, we've had some follow-on kind of effects of this, and as you quite rightly say, it's not just the initial impact that affects people. It's we're 3 years down the line, and I'll be quite frank with you, it's worse now than it ever has been. We struggle day to day. I've lost my job in the Air Force through my injuries, and my wife suffers with memory loss and various other complications from her injury. And God only knows what goes through my other daughter's mind, when she thinks of her sister and what she saw that night. So, the impact goes on and on. It doesn't stop immediately that incident is cleared up. The families will suffer for the rest of our lives. The guy that hit us got put away for 10 years, which in our eyes was a good sentence, and a just sentence. Although, the judge basically gave him everything that she could. He pleaded guilty eventually. So she then has to knock, a certain amount of time off of the maximum sentence, which is 14 years for the offence that he made. And then obviously he gets half of his time off for good behaviour as well. So he'll be out in 5 years, even though he got a 10-year sentence, which for me, I don't know, a lot of people is disgraceful really for what he's done to us and what he's done to Evey. And we feel that the sentencing needs to be harsher. There needs to be more of a deterrent out there to stop these people doing this kind of thing. I know some people lost causes. You're not going to be able to get to everybody, but maybe by changing that sentencing, then you may well get one or two people thinking about their actions in a little bit more with a little bit more thought, really. As I say, 14 years as a maximum sentence, which I know very, very rarely gets given out, if at all, is a disgrace really for what has happened to us. And for him to be out in 5, it's not justice as far as we're concerned as a family. We're thankful, obviously, that the judicial system, the investigating team, did absolutely everything that they could with regards to the investigation to our incident. So we have no issues whatsoever with the actual judge herself, and obviously with the team that investigated our incident. It's just the fact that the judge's hands were tied with regards to the maximum sentence, the cap that she has to work with. Yeah, exactly. Why there's that kind of cap on this kind of incident, God only knows. There's been other incidents that I know of where more than one person has been killed in very similar circumstances, yet the person that's done the deed only gets tried for basically killing one person. Really, it's all kept as the same sentence as killing one person. So things need to be changed with regards to the sentencing upper limits, definitely. And I think we need some serious deterrence in this country to stop people doing it.
Okay.
Because too many people think they can get away with it, and recreational drugs as well are just as a hazard as drinking is. So we continue to go on. We take each day as it comes, and we've off the back of we did a drink drive campaign for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary a couple of years ago. Off the back of that, we started a charity up on the island for road safety, and again, we're getting a crumb of comfort from doing that, and hopefully, stopping another family going through what we continue to go through, really.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much my story.
Okay, that's it's one of those things, I think, Neil, that I spent 7 years on road policing, and I don't think you ever get used to these things. No. As a police officer, we deal with them, we get on with it, but I don't. And listening to your story just fills me up with all sorts of other memories of things that I've dealt with. And so, Paul's in the room here. Paul, were you involved with this incident, Paul?
No, I woke up in North Yorkshire, but I actually was in the Air Force with Neil. So, been friends with him for a long time, and as a roads policing officer, his story absolutely broke my heart, as it would anybody. And just to add to Neil, I don't know if you want to mention the fact you were dragged back through the courts earlier this year because he put an appeal in. Yeah,
bless him. The guy actually had the temerity to actually appeal his sentence. He's obviously got hold of a good fly-by-night lawyer, and dragged us through the Old Bailey earlier on this year. But luckily, the 3 judges that sat at the appeal just dismissed it outright. You could just see that they thought he was wasting their time, which was obviously good for us, but we did need that a couple of
just
years
something just an extra thing that you don't need.
Exactly. So, it's crazy.
So it's one of those things where you sort of look at, and you said that you're living day to day and dealing with the issues that have befallen you as a day-to-day issue, and then you've also said that you've done some charity work as well. Is this a charity that you've set up yourselves that you're still running now?
Yeah.
Okay. What can you tell us about your charity, Neil?
It's basically a road safety charity. We didn't want to purely keep it as anti-drink drive, because we wanted to get other people involved. On the Isle of Wight, where I come from, there's a lot of nasty incidents down here. Big roads, the road system, although it's being upgraded now, the actual road surfaces aren't particularly great, and people still seem to think that they can get from A to B as quick as they did 20 years ago. Still today, and there's 3 or 4 times as many cars on the roads down here now than we ever used to be. And obviously they're a lot more powerful, the cars these days. Yes. So what we wanted to do is get other families involved in the charity, just so it had more impact, really. Obviously having lost Evey, we had a fairly large kind of impacted story there to try and get across to people, but we felt that by getting other families involved that we could touch other road safety concerns, not just drink driving. So we asked the community to actually name the charity. We wanted to get them involved, and the charity was named because it's the Isle of Wight. It was called Isle Drive Safe, but a lot of people said that we should have Evie's name in there as well. So we had the tag, kind of a tag attached to it. Remember Evey. So it's Isle Drive Safe. Remember Evey, the charity. Wow. We're run primarily by family and a couple of friends. And I think we've raised over £10,000 now to go towards road safety projects and ideas and various other things that we're trying to do. Yeah, I was first to hold my hand up at the start of it all. It all seemed a great idea to start a road safety charity up, but then you actually get into the nuts and bolts of it, and road safety is just a vast subject, and we needed a little bit of help along the way. So luckily we've had a PR company come on board with us to do some pro bono work and kind of guide us to I suppose best way to put it is to kind of give us a little bit more focus and a little bit more of a focal point to get to, and give us a plan over a time period as well. So we've got a 3-year plan to work to, and obviously we've got various ideas coming along to use that money to hopefully go to all good causes and community efforts on the island to obviously slow down people on the island, stop and drink driving, do all the things that we can really.
Yeah, fantastic.
What we'd like to do.
Neil, can I just
ask?
Sure. Sorry. So can I just ask, has your local police and crime commissioner offered up any funding for the project you're working on? I mean, they are a contentious point to many people, but they do have funds available for crime prevention and other initiatives to try and help.
Yeah. In a word, no, they haven't. We do have the support of Hampshire Constabulary. A guy called Andy Marsh, who's the Chief Constable of Hampshire. We've got to know him quite well. Met him again a couple of weeks ago at an event, and he actually still has a picture of Evey in his office because he was obviously quite affected by it. So we know we've got the support there. We've spoken to a High Sheriff from Hampshire and various other people. The Roads Policing Unit on the island have been unbelievably supportive, as has all of the emergency services on the island. But as far as kind of grants and things go, to be honest, we're probably not quite in the position to be asking for those at the moment because we were such a small charity to start off with. We didn't register straight away because you don't need to as a small charity until you raise over £5,000. So we thought, right, we'll see how we go, because only recently we've actually raised upwards of 10 now. Our application for accreditation as a proper charity, so to speak, has gone in. So we're waiting for that to come about, and then once we are a fully fledged charity in that respect, we will start going to some of these bigger players and obviously trying to get grants and money from them.
I mean, the reason I mentioned the Police and Crime Commissioner is that you don't have to be a charity. Their funds are available for good causes, and worthwhile crime prevention initiatives.
Right.
It might be worth having a word either with the PCC's office or if you still have an FLO on the island that you're in contact with.
Yeah, my
family liaison officer or the road policing unit.
Yeah,
they might be able to help.
Yeah,
a few buttons there.
My flow has become a good friend. So and to be quite honest, you mentioned earlier on about the amount of people that are affected by it and the incidents that you guys have been to and been affected by. Well, believe you me, the chaps down here were very affected by it, by our incident especially, and there's some hardened cops down here.
There is a comment for you.
Yeah.
There is a comment for you in the SciCon from Devon Cornwall ARV Sergeant Harry Tankey, who mentions the Learn to Live, which I know something that Harry's involved in. I don't know whether you're aware of that or something you might want to speak to Harry about or contact him about.
I've not seen that before, so yes, I will.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to find out more about that.
Yeah. I mean, we could perhaps get Harry in at some point because I know that he's on duty. So
I'll drop out.
Harry, if you're free to come in, let's get you in. Now, Harry might be in his car. Oh no, he's in the yard.
There we go. It's just a big poster behind me, honestly.
Yeah.
How are you, gentlemen? I've been listening in the last sort of 10 minutes. But very interesting. And Neil, really, I didn't catch your whole story, but I know it's just massively impactful. And something Learn to Live in a real summary is only at one time of the year we, for example, in Exeter, I get a whole of Exeter University were people who are just about to drive or have just started driving, and it's really aimed at those who are passengers, front seat passengers, because they call that the sacrificial seat, the front seat passenger, because the driver tends to steer away from the problem. So inevitably, it can a lot of the time be young girls that are killed. And in Learn to Live, it's the students put together a video, they play the video, and then they stop it, and then a police officer comes on. And that's my part in the Exeter area. And then the video plays again, and then a consultant, paramedic comes on, and then a firefighter comes on. But then a next of kin comes. And when you have a mother or someone like that, or someone like you, who is really speaking from the heart and saying, and you have to visit the scene when you were told, and you can obviously become quite emotional. And when you see the texts going on in the auditorium at the beginning with literally 2,000 students, and they all start flickering and dying away, and then you see 3 or 4, and then you see nothing, and then you just see tears on people as they come out of the auditorium. And it is just a way of getting them into their hearts that it's that social acceptance to say, look, driving fast is not clever. And if you feel as if you're in danger, then you are in danger and you need to do something about it. And it's hitting it at the lower level, sort of the honest truth with their new song, that's kind of catchy little song directed at children, and it's just someone like you, Neil, it's a national thing. They would really love to see you and speak to you about that. I mean, I can certainly get into contact with people. I don't want to push you into anything, and it's something we can discuss afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Right? But to be quite honest with you, the guys actually down here do a couple of events at schools around the island. One of them's called Safe Drive, Stay Alive, which I think is very similar to what you're describing, where you get the various emergency services and a next of kin come up and do a speech at a school. But they also do something else called Head On. I don't know whether you guys have heard that before, where they go into schools and do a mock-up crash and extraction using all the emergency services. And they spend a day with the kids basically, and as you say, they're all of the kind of 5th, 6th formers that are just about to get into cars with people. And I've been to one of those events, and that was in the early days, and probably was a little bit too raw for me back then. Of course, So, but again, unbelievably impactful, and they use actual incidents that have happened, in our area, and they don't pull any punches. Some of the pictures are quite graphic. And I think it needs to be that way. It needs to be sort of local, so that kids can go, oh yeah, I know that bit. Oh blimey, that actually happens here, does it? And then they see someone like you, and they go, well, he looks like my dad. Oh my God, and it really, they expect a whole bunch of people like me and the firefighters to come along and on the stage and say, right, and this is what they genuinely expect: don't have fun, don't drive fast, drive safely. Oh, how boring, Because the problem that we have with this drink driving, the biggest problem, none of them think they're going to get caught. None of them do. And they think they drive perfectly all right. So they are there in their own arrogance of, well, it won't happen to me. And that's the bit to get through. So it's all very well saying, I've heard some of the comments, they should get life for life. They should just get life. I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think, because they would genuinely think, it won't happen to me. I won't get caught. And it's getting them. It's a bit like, and I say, I don't want to simplify it, but the same system. A while back, you could have dropped litter and no one would have dropped they wouldn't have turned an eyelid. The same for dog poo and all that. Now people will jump on you. It's making it socially unacceptable, and that's the powerful thing. If people say, you will slow the hell down, or I'm not getting in that car, and if you get in that car now, you've had a drink, I am telling the cops, and that's basically what we need to do. Yeah, absolutely. It's empowering people, isn't it, with some balls to actually,
indeed,
and not.
I think, as I said before, that I'm certainly not in a position to tell Hannah's story, because that's for Hannah to tell. And I've discussed it with Hannah, and I've also had the pleasure of meeting a mum and talking with a mum as well, who is also an amazingly strong woman and determined to make a difference with this stuff. But there were 3 stereotype sort of images, and I'm sure Hannah won't mind me mentioning this, that came out of her brother's accident, in that he's 21. So the immediate assumption of a 21-year-old lad is that he's really drunk, he's driving too fast, or he's distracted because all his mates are messing about with him in the car and they're goofing about. And he was on his own. he was at 43 miles an hour on a 60-mile-an-hour road, and he was 1.5 times the drink drive limit. And I nearly said only. He was 1.5 times the drink drive limit, but to his friends, he looked perfectly sober.
Sure.
And those are real issues for people to get their head around. The fact that, you know, I mean, I've obviously geared up some questions for Hannah, but I've been rapidly sort of looking at something. How can I readjust this question for Neil? But one of the things here is that I said, I don't think there's a person in here, and there's 28 people watching at the moment. And obviously this will go to a replay so people can watch it later. But I don't think there's a person in here now that will say that they're drinking and driving to be safe. But people still do it. And while we want to get to zero, that's where we want to be. While we get in there, what changes, Neil, would you like to see? I know you've touched on some of them, but what changes would you like to see? Changes in the law, changes in attitude, all these sort of ideas that will try and make a difference now while we're trying to get to that. Maybe an unattainable zero.
The biggest one is to spend some money on the police force, get the guys out there. You know, that's one of the only ways you're going to actually put some semblance
That'll get
of
you
a
lots
deterrent.
of props at the bottom. There's lots of cops in here, and you're saying, spend some money on the cops, we'll all click that one. But sorry, I interrupted you. Go on, sorry.
Coming from a military background, you know, we suffer the same way. You know, chopped, and you know, you're doing 2 or 3 people's job for the price of one. It's a bargain, isn't it, for these guys that hold the purse strings. And I know you guys are exactly the same. You know, I don't like to keep harping back to the island, but again, the guys down here, you know, they're what, a dozen strong, if that, to patrol the whole of the island. And then when you factor in all of their diversions, you know, sometimes there's only 1 or 2 people out at night in a car doing the whole of the Isle of Wight, and that's just not good enough. You know, as you say, you know, it's a lot of rural roads here. There's a lot of rural pubs. People are chance their arm, and a rural pub coupled with rural roads, you know, doesn't usually end very well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd like to see more feet on the ground, and I'd like to see harsher sentencing.
Okay.
It's as simple as
that. We've got an interesting question there, because Bosco's come with a question that we've got on the side there. It says, do we think that current sentencing guidelines are sufficient to address this issue, or should sentences be tougher? Should we be banning people from the road for life, for example?
It's a tough one, because you know, if they're of a mind, they'll just carry on driving anyway illegally. So I don't know about lifetime bans. Rehabilitation, again, I think some people are past caring, but some people can be rehabilitated, I suppose. But I think we shouldn't be concentrating on that, because that's after the court. That's after the game, isn't it? That you should be trying to get him before they commit the crime, and I think that's where we need to concentrate our efforts. Really, get into people's minds, as you say, that it's socially unacceptable. That the consequences are far more far-reaching than that initial incident on the night that it happens.
I think
get into their minds. And get families, empower families to nag people that they know constantly drink and drive. You know, the guy that hit us was a habitual drink driver, habitual drug user, and lots of people knew he used to do it every day to and from work. He worked in another town from the one just up the road from me, where he was heading, and he chose that day to have a few pints at lunchtime, smoke some cannabis in the afternoon, have a few pints after work, smoke some more cannabis, and then drive home to the other side of the Isle of Wight. You know, I just don't understand the amount of people that knew he was doing that, and no one said a thing. And so all those people, in my eyes, are as guilty as he is, to a certain extent.
Can I just pick up on...
Yes,
Neil, can I just pick on something you said there? Obviously, we are reducing in numbers. I think it was James Mullin put a question in relation to texting a drink driver. I know some forces do it. We don't in North Yorkshire, but some forces offer the option of texting to report a drink driver. They're sort of like who, where, when they are and where they're going to go.
Yeah, we've got that down here.
Yeah. I know some research was done, because I think most people would say you wouldn't stand in a pub with 4 people, ring the police and say, this chap's about to drink and drive. Can you come and do something about it? There's almost an unwritten rule with texting. You don't generally look over people's shoulder. So I think it's a good idea. And I know some forces have had some really good results with that. But what I would say is, in relation to the public, we are reliant on them. They are our eyes and ears. And certainly we in North Yorkshire become a lot more intelligence-led and driven by people reporting to us. And I think that's one of the key ways of getting the message across.
Can I just butt in on that? Can I just butt in? Sorry, another one is a really useful one and easy to do is 101. Devon and Cornwall, for example, is 101 at devonandcornwall.pnn.police.uk. Long email address, but will be on Google. And it's your force with the 101 at the beginning. And then you can just say anything to them. And that information will get to the right people. That will go direct. It's the quickest and easiest way, a bit like the texting, really.
Yeah. It's a bit, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that there's an app and a website that runs with local authorities where you can report where there's a pothole. Yeah. And it will tell you, and it feeds back to the local authority and says, this is where a pothole is, and they'll go out and deal with it. And you think, why have we not got something that sort of just says, there's a drink driver in here? It gives people that opportunity just to report stuff simply and easily. But I think one of the things that, I was going to say that Neil, the consequences and the impact, it's like throwing a stone into a pond, isn't it? The ripples go out. The impact of this tragedy will go out now, and they continue to ripple out and touch far more people than those originally involved. And that was going to bring me to Harry, really, and the video that you've got on Learn to Live, where it's blatantly obvious in the way that you speak in that video of how that incident affected you as a cop just going to the scene.
It's I don't like to call it a story. It's an account really that I do use in the Learn to Live, and it's really important that I don't have it as a script. Mine's quite unique, where I have the mother who tends to, not this year, but she tends to do the next of kin part. And so the students are like, well, and she says, well, and I don't say that the mother's turning up. And it really brings a little bit of it together. Incredibly powerful, but it's something you've just got to relive it. And each time you can think of something else. And it's simple things like the cops, and Paul will know, and you yourself will know, it's not the messy stuff, it's the simple stuff. And with my account, as you know, it's the flip-flops and the bare feet, and it's because it's so unnatural place, it shouldn't be there. And that's the mental picture I have in my mind. That's the snapshot I have of that incident. And it's weird how it works, but I mean, that one, I had a little wobbly lip moment in that video. And I'll tell you now, is because the mother was there to do her talking heads bit next, and she was in the same room. And of course, the mistake I did was to look across to her and say, how much she just misses her daughter. Like Neil said, I think you said, did you say, Neil, 3.5 years? Did you? And it doesn't get easy. You think of them every day. She thinks of her every day, and she learns to cope with nuts and bolts of life, but she will never ever get over it. Of course, she was there, standing there while I was there, so I had a little bit of a wobbly lip moment on that video. Made quite a few people depressed, unfortunately. But but saying that as well, Neil, as well, is we meet up once a year with various relatives and with other service, fire and whatever. And it's not at all depressing when we get together and we do, and there's a lot of support, and it's not Learn to Live when we've got, and it really is good to meet up with a whole bunch of people who have got something similar. We'll never have to deal with, God forbid, anything, Neil, that you've had to do. So let me make that very clear. But I think it's quite, what I want to say is it's not depressing. It's let's see if we can help prevent this thing in the future. And I think when Ali for Norwich, and she runs drink drive campaigns down here, and when she sees the results of those people and they just come out and give her a big hug, and you just think, that's great. And you get occasional messages to say, do you know, I'd never done it before, but I told him to slow down, and I got out of the car and I rang my mum and dad, and they picked me up. You know, that's hopefully you think, will it last for 6 months, 6 years? I think so. The information seems to be coming back that it is, but it's so important, Neil, that you tell your story and you remind us that it can happen to people who look just like you. You know, that's just incredible. It doesn't happen to those statistics on the TV and radio only. You know,
that's great.
I've popped sort of Neil and Penny's story, which is on YouTube. I'm sure Constable already did that. So after this Blab, I know, Harry, yours very impactful from an officer's point of view. I've seen the whole lot. There's about 5 from Neil and Penny's story, including the arresting officer or officer in the case, and the collision investigator and the doctor, etc. It's well worth a watch.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think, guys, thank you for your input. Thank you, Neil, truly from my heart for the courage to come on and talk to us about that. I really, truly appreciate that. As do my other co-hosts, Nathan, Constable, and Chaos, who have dropped out to let these other 2 guys in. I think what I'd like to do now is thank you for being here. I don't hold you to stay any longer. If you want to stay longer and talk to some of the people, what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask Harry and Paul to drop out, and we'll perhaps get Chaos in. And we'll
say a quick goodbye to Paul.
Yes.
Last time I saw him, we were on a little bit of a social. Paul, take care. And well done for sorting it. Catch you guys later.
Thanks for joining us, Harry.
Chaos as well, much appreciated.
Thank you, Harry. And thank you, Paul, as well.
So, Neil, thank you. You're welcome to stay. But what I'd like to do is Chaos and Nathan may have some questions that they want to throw out. And then I think what we need to do is then start inviting people into the video seats and see if we can get other people in as well.
I'll drop out. Thanks for having me. And so Neil, if you need anything else, please get in touch, obviously via Paul.
I will. I'll speak to Paul and I'll drop you an email. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.